House of the Dragon, Season 2, Episode 5, is called Regent. King Aegon has fallen, so the Greens choose a new leader. Rhaenyra's team grieve the death of Rhaenys, and they make a bold plan to recruit new dragon riders. Meanwhile, Daemon has creepy dreams and does a war crime. So what's happening, what does it mean, and how does the show compare to the books? This video has no spoilers for future episodes. Last episode, there was a battle between Aegon's side, the Greens, and Rhaenyra's side, the Blacks. Aegon and his dragon were hurt, and Rhaenys and her dragon Meleys were killed. So now Gwaine and Criston return to King's Landing with Meleys's head. They try to use it for propaganda. To make Aegon seem strong, they claim that Aegon killed Meleys, when it was actually Aemond and Vhagar who killed Meleys. Criston thinks that the people will celebrate this victory, but the people are disturbed by the dead dragon. They thought dragons were like gods, but Hugh sees that dragons are just meat. The Targaryens want people to think that the Targaryens are different and better than normal people. The Targaryens are closer to gods than to men, and that's why they deserve to rule the realm. In the books, this idea is called Targaryen exceptionalism. And the dragons are part of this. Dragons are powerful, magical creatures that are only controlled by Targaryens. They are a symbol of Targaryen invincibility. So when people see that Rhaenys Targaryen and her dragon were killed, it makes the Targaryens and their dragons look vulnerable. Maybe anyone can kill a dragon. So this parade was a mistake. Criston is not as smart at PR as Otto was. Last episode, Aemond betrayed his brother Aegon and burned him. So now Aegon is in a coma with a broken leg and terrible burns. In the books, his hip is broken as well, and his armor is melted into his flesh. Though in Hot D, Aegon's armor is made of Valyrian steel, so it doesn't melt. Orwyle and the Maesters try to save Aegon, but no one knows if he'll survive. The Silent Sisters circle him like vultures. The Order of Silent Sisters tend to the dead. Alicent sees that Aemond took Aegon's dagger. Alicent suspects that Aemond hurt Aegon. So Alicent asks Criston what happened, and Criston doesn't tell her. Surely Criston and his men saw that Aemond's dragon burned Aegon, but Criston doesn't want to get his buddy Prince Aemond in trouble. Alicent is Criston's queen and his secret lover, but Criston sides with Aemond and says he doesn't know what happened to Aegon. Just like when Orwyle told Alicent that he didn't know Viserys' wishes. Everyone is gaslighting Alicent, showing her no loyalty. Criston says that Aegon's dragon Sunfire is still at Rook's Rest. It sounds like Sunfire is dying, but is not yet dead. In the book, Sunfire can't fly because his wing is hurt, so he crawls through the ashes like a great golden worm, eating the carcasses of the slain. With King Aegon hurt, someone else needs to lead the Greens. Alicent says that she should be regent to officially rule in Aegon's name. Alicent is qualified for the job because she and Otto ruled for King Viserys for years while Viserys was sick. In Season 1, Alicent often argued for the good of the realm and for protecting the people. As regent, Alicent could finally have the power to guide the realm towards peace. But the council reject Alicent because she's a woman. The realm expects a man to lead in wartime. And it would send a weird message if Alicent ruled, because the whole reason Aegon is king is because the Greens reject Rhaenyra for being female. This is team patriarchy, so naturally they deny Alicent. Alicent expects her allies, Larys and Criston, to support her as regent, but they both reject Alicent and say Aemond should be regent. Half the reason Criston and Larys have power is thanks to Alicent. Criston is also her lover, and Larys sexually exploited her. She feels betrayed by her most intimate allies. For all those years, Alicent did the work, followed the rules. She believed in the system and waited for her turn to lead. Now that she's rejected, what was it all for? Maybe Rhaenys was right. In this world of men, Alicent will never have real power, only a window in the wall of her prison. So Aemond becomes regent, with the power to rule in Aegon's name. And Aemond is heir to the throne, and he rides the world's biggest dragon. So what will he do with all this power? Previously, Aegon hanged 100 rat catchers. Now Aemond has them removed, and we see the dog that was owned by Cheese, one of the men who murdered Jaehaerys, and the dog is still staying by Cheese's body, still loyal to its master, even though we saw Cheese kick the dog. The loyalty of this dog contrasts with the disloyalty of Criston and Larys. Alicent angrily confronts Criston for rejecting her as regent. Criston says Aemond must rule because he is the male, he's the heir to the throne, and that's the order of things. Those are the same words that Rhaenys used in Season 1, telling Rhaenyra that men won't accept a female ruler. Alicent is rejected just as Rhaenyra is. Maybe they should be on the same side. Criston tries to talk about his trauma from the battle at Rook's Rest. He saw hundreds of men burn alive, but he struggles to describe it, and Alicent doesn't listen very well, so they fail to connect. Alicent tells Criston not to use her name, as though they aren't friends and aren't lovers anymore, just a queen and a knight. Is this the end of their relationship? Criston is still Hand of the King and commander of the Kingsguard. If Alicent has a bad relationship with Criston and with the regent, Aemond, how will Alicent have any political influence? Aemond stares at the throne amidst lightning, like a dramatic supervillain. Helaena asks Aemond, was it worth the price? It seems like Helaena knows that Aemond burned Aegon, because Helaena has those visions of the future. Aemond has wanted to be king for a long time, and with Aegon near death, Aemond is so close to the throne. But this comes at the price of betraying his brother and king. Is it worth doing evil to get power? Aemond is already blamed for the death of his nephew Luke. He may be hated as a kinslayer, cursed by the gods. What more will Aemond sacrifice? What more does he want? The actor Ewan Mitchell says Aemond really just wants to be loved by his mother Alicent. But Aemond acts tough and cold to protect his emotional vulnerability. Deep down, he is still that scared, bullied boy. So without maternal love, he seeks validation through war and power. Helaena doesn't seem too upset that her husband-brother Aegon is near death. Aegon has been a bad husband, and maybe Helaena already knows if Aegon will survive from her visions. At this point in the books, Helaena is lost to madness and grief after the murder of her son Jaehaerys. She spends her days in darkness, weeping. But in Hot D, Helaena seems more detached, more mysterious. Some fans speculate that Helaena and Aemond might get together. If Aemond becomes king, he will need a queen, and previously he's mentioned marrying Helaena. Or maybe he'll marry Sylvie. Aegon's face is half burned, so he looks like his father Viserys did. Maybe Aegon could wear Viserys's mask. Alicent sits by his bed, not knowing if her son will live or die, just like how she cared for Viserys when he was dying. Alicent touches Aegon tenderly, which might be the first time we've seen Alicent touch Aegon with love. Previously, we've only seen Alicent hit Aegon, touch him angrily. As Alicent walks away, Aegon says, "Mummy," but tragically, Alicent doesn't hear. Like Aemond, Aegon is desperate for love from his mother, but Aegon and Alicent keep failing to connect. This is a war story, but it's also about a family who struggle to love each other. Hugh the blacksmith and his wife Cat are afraid. There's not enough food in King's Landing. Their daughter is sick. They're worried about the war. So Cat wants to go to her brother in Tumbleton. Tumbleton is a town in the Reach, ruled by House Footley. Hugh wants to stay. King Aegon promised to pay Hugh for the scorpions he helped build, but Aegon didn't keep his promise. So Hugh and his family, and many other common people, try to leave King's Landing. but Aemond closes the gates. The hungry people cry out for meat, just like Hugh said Meleys is meat. Will the people turn against the Greens? In the Riverlands, Daemon tries to gather an army. He tells Lord Amos of House Bracken to join his side or die. But Amos refuses to join Daemon because Daemon is allied with the Blackwoods, and the Brackens hate Blackwoods. Amos sent Willem Blackwood the severed head of his brother, Lord Samwell, who was killed at the Battle of the Burning Mill. It was pretty dumb of Daemon to bring a Blackwood to a meeting with Brackens. Daemon is not great at diplomacy. The Brackens bravely reject Daemon, so Daemon makes a plan. He tells Willem Blackwood to attack the Brackens with brutal atrocities, to exploit their weaknesses, take hostages, to force the Brackens to join Daemon. Daemon returns to Harrenhal, and he has a creepy dream. He has sex with this woman who tells him that he is brave and strong and should be king. Daemon feels that strength makes him worthy of love. Then it's revealed that this woman is Daemon's mother, Alyssa Targaryen. The incest reflects Daemon's narcissism. He only values love from his own family, from people who are like him. That's why he disrespects everyone in the Riverlands. He doesn't see people as human unless they are his blonde blood relatives. Maybe incest is bad. This is our first glimpse of Alyssa Targaryen. In the books, Alyssa was a rebellious tomboy. She married her brother Balon, and she took her young sons Viserys and Daemon on dragon rides on Meleys, the same dragon who was later ridden by Rhaenys. In the books, Alyssa had a crooked, broken nose from being hit with a sword, and she had two different coloured eyes, one purple and one green. But in this dream, Alyssa's eyes are dark. Maybe Daemon doesn't know what Alyssa looked like, because Alyssa died young from childbirth complications, when Daemon was about 3 years old. Maybe Daemon's incestuous dream reflects his desire to be loved by a mother. We saw Daemon being held by Mysaria, just like how Aemond is held by Sylvie. Daemon and Aemond both want maternal love, and compensate with strength and power. Later, we see Daemon with one eye visible. Daemon and Aemond are so alike. Daemon wakes up from the sex dream and finds himself at dinner with the Strongs. The Strongs talk about preferring to eat duck or goose. In Season 1, Rhaenyra and Laenor talked about duck and goose as an analogy for being straight or gay. It seems that Daemon's sexual preference is blood relatives. Alice Rivers looks at Daemon knowingly. It seems like Alice is causing Daemon's weird dreams, with the magic of the old gods and that potion, and Daemon's weirwood bed. Then Daemon mentions High Heart, which is a hill in the Riverlands sacred to the old gods. High Heart once had a circle of great weirwood trees, until the trees were cut down. In the time of the Game of Thrones books, High Heart is haunted by a mysterious witch called the Ghost of High Heart, who has dreams of the future. She's kind of like Alice Rivers. Daemon tells Simon to call him king. Not just king consort, meaning the husband of the ruling queen Rhaenyra, but king, as though Daemon rules in his own right. Daemon is hinting that he'll take Rhaenyra's power and rule himself. Daemon and Simon work to repair Harrenhal so it can host armies of rivermen. Daemon helps by chopping firewood. There are probably more important things that Prince Daemon could be doing, like rallying riverlords, burning greens, telling Rhaenyra his plans, but instead he chops wood. And Daemon hears screams in some magic hallucination, because the Blackwoods are doing terrible things on Daemon's orders. The Blackwoods are killing Bracken civilians, kidnapping women and children, using them as hostages to force the Brackens to join Daemon. Alice says it's wrong to make innocent people suffer, and she says Rhaenyra wouldn't want this. Like with the murder of Jaehaerys, Rhaenyra could be blamed for Daemon's atrocities. But Daemon doesn't care. He wants to rule with fear. And he says that Rhaenyra will fail, that the realm won't accept her because she's a woman. Daemon says he will take the throne and he will rule, with Rhaenyra or without her. Daemon is talking treason. For Daemon to rule would be a betrayal of his wife and queen Rhaenyra, and a betrayal of King Viserys' wishes, and it would break the laws of succession. There are legal arguments for either Rhaenyra or Aegon to rule, because they are both the children of King Viserys. But there is no law of succession that would allow Daemon to be king while Viserys' children are still alive. Alice brings up Daemon's mother, showing she knows about Daemon's dreams. Then Simon Strong looks at Alice strangely, and then Alice disappears behind Simon? Where did Alice go? Did she transform into a barn owl or into a swarm of bats? Is Alice really there, or is Alice just a ghost or a vision that only Daemon can see? We've never seen anyone other than Daemon talk to Alice. What is she? Simon says that the Blackwoods overwhelmed the Brackens, and the Brackens have joined Daemon. But at night, Daemon is visited by angry riverlords. The subtitles say they include a piper and a darry. These are minor houses from the Riverlands. And these guys are angry at Daemon and Willem's atrocities, the murders and kidnappings, the burning of farms and sacred septs. They say the Blackwoods carried Rhaenyra and Daemon's banners, which makes them look responsible for these crimes. Daemon told Willem that he didn't want to look responsible, so Willem kinda screwed Daemon over here. The Riverlords say they will not follow a murderous tyrant like Daemon. The Riverlands have a long history of resisting foreign occupation, like when they turned against Black Harren Hoare, who built this ruined castle Harrenhal. Daemon tries to act tough, but he has a vision of his dead wife Laena, who asks if Daemon is looking after their daughters, Baela and Rhaena. We've seen Daemon ignoring and neglecting his daughters, and now his Blackwood atrocities are terrorizing more families, hurting more daughters. Daemon must feel some guilt. So the Riverlords storm off. Daemon keeps saying that he'll rule the realm, but so far, he's failing to lead just the Riverlands. It doesn't seem like Daemon would be a good king. We see the Eyrie in the Vale, ruled by House Arryn. The Eyrie looks different to how it looks in Game of Thrones and in the books. The Eyrie is very difficult to attack, because to get into the Vale, you have to get past the Bloody Gate.
Who would pass the Bloody Gate?
The Bloody Hound.
Then you have to get past the Gates of the Moon. Then you have to climb a mountain called the Giant's Lance, which is defended by 3 smaller castles. And then you've got to climb a 600-foot cliff to get to the Eyrie. So the Eyrie is said to be impregnable, unless you have a dragon to fly over its defenses. That's how Visenya Targaryen took the Eyrie in Aegon's conquest. The Vale is ruled by Lady Jane Arryn. She agreed to send an army to help Queen Rhaenyra, and in return, Jane wants a dragon to protect her. So Rhaenyra sent Rhaena Targaryen to the Eyrie, along with Rhaenyra's sons, Joffrey, Aegon, and Viserys, and Joffrey's dragon Tyraxes and Aegon's dragon Stormcloud. But Tyraxes and Stormcloud are young dragons, probably too small to fight. So Jane is angry that Rhaenyra kind of cheated her. Jane doesn't like feeling powerless. In the books, Jane has faced rebellions from her own family. Rhaena also feels powerless. She's frustrated that she doesn't have a dragon and has to be the babysitter instead of fighting this war. On Dragonstone, Rhaenyra's Black Council are shook. They lost the castles of Rosby, Stokeworth, Duskendale, and Rook's Rest. They lost Rhaenys, and their biggest dragon, Meleys, is dead. The Greens might be more vulnerable now that Aegon's dragon Sunfire is down, but the Blacks don't have a dragon big enough to fight Aemon's dragon Vhagar. Daemon's dragon Caraxes is away at Harrenhal. They don't want to put Rhaenyra in danger by using her dragon Syrax, and Jace and Baela's dragons Vermax and Moondancer are way too small to fight Vhagar. Steffon Darklyn wants to get revenge for Duskendale, his home, where his father, Lord Darklyn, was killed. But the Blacks still don't have an army. Their allies in the north and the Vale still won't arrive for a while. So what can they do? Rhaenyra sends support to Maidenpool and Cracklaw Point, which are minor locations in the Crown Lands. Maidenpool has a famous bathhouse where Queen Alysanne was almost assassinated by Scepters. Cracklaw Point is home to a fan-favourite book character called Nimble Dick Crab. The councillors don't include Queen Rhaenyra in their war plans because she's a woman. Alfred says the gentler sex doesn't understand war, even though Alfred has also never been to war, because the last 70 years were mostly peaceful. Alfred also doesn't know how to fly dragons, unlike Rhaenyra. But when Rhaenyra asks what she should do, her men don't say anything. They say nothing, like how Alicent told Aegon to do nothing. So Rhaenyra is frustrated that she wasn't trained for war. We saw how young Aegon and Aemond and Jace were trained to fight from a young age. But since Rhaenyra is female, she was Viserys' cupbearer, pouring wine and being ignored at council. She wasn't taught how to lead a war. Daemon is an experienced war commander, but Rhaenyra can't rely on him. So Mysaria says that there are other ways to fight wars. She suggests using rumours to influence the common people of King's Landing. Because the people are hungry and scared, Mysaria hopes to use them against Aegon and the Greens. So Rhaenyra and Mysaria send Alinda Massey. Alinda is one of Rhaenyra's handmaids. She's been around since season 1. And Alinda is the daughter of Lord Gorman Massey on Rhaenyra's council. So Alinda goes to King's Landing, where Aemond has closed the city gates. But a gold cloak lets Alinda inside anyway, because Alinda mentions Mysaria. Alicent and Larys tried to remove Mysaria's influence, but it seems that Mysaria still has friends in King's Landing. Alinda meets with Diana. Diana used to work in the Red Keep, but then Aegon raped Diana, and Diana was fired. Maybe Diana and Alinda can spread word of Aegon's evil acts to turn the people against the Greens. How will Larys react? Because Larys is Aegon's master of whisperers. He's meant to deal with rumours. Will there be a propaganda war, a war of whispers between Larys and Mysaria? Rhaenyra and Baelor mourn the death of Baelor's grandma, Rhaenys. Rhaenys was one of Rhaenyra's best advisors, but now Aemond has killed Rhaenys, just as Aemond killed Rhaenyra's son, Luke. We learn that a young Daemon wanted to claim the dragon Meleys, because Meleys was the dragon of his mother, Alyssa. But Meleys wouldn't accept Daemon, and instead, Rhaenys claimed Meleys. So dragons don't just accept anyone as their rider. It seems that dragons choose their rider. Rhaenyra needs a powerful, experienced ally to help her lead this war. So Rhaenyra asks Lord Corlys Velaryon to be her hand of the Queen, her right-hand man. Corlys is rich and powerful and has a big fleet, and he has experience of war in the Stepstones, so he's a good choice as hand. Though, does Corlys still think that Rhaenyra murdered his son Laenor? They haven't talked about that yet. On Driftmark, Corlys is overwhelmed by grief for his wife Rhaenys. He looks like Laenor looked when Laena died, wanting to be taken by the sea. Both Corlys's children are gone. His brother Vaemond is dead. Corlys's heir Luke is dead, and now his wife is dead. He's lost most of his family. Corlys is still a rich, powerful lord, but he feels like he has nothing. Baelor talks about Corlys's famous sea voyages. Corlys sailed further than any Westerosi had before. He sailed to Yi Ti in the Far East, which is the Game of Thrones version of China. He sailed further to Ashai, which is a distant, dark city at the edge of the world, inhabited by Shadowbinders and Blood Mages. HBO is making an animated TV show about Corlys's voyages. Corlys's trade with eastern cities on these voyages made the Velaryons rich and powerful, and Baelor says that Corlys did all of this for Rhaenys. Corlys is so devastated by Rhaenys' death that he says he wants to sail into the west and be lost. Everyone who's sailed west of Westeros hasn't returned, so wanting to sail west is like wanting to die. But Baelor convinces Corlys to stay and live, and to help Rhaenyra as Hand of the Queen. Corlys asks Baelor to be his heir, to rule Driftmark, because Luke Velaryon is dead, and his brother Joffrey is young, and is not really a Velaryon, and Corlys doesn't seem to much respect his granddaughter Rhaena, so he asks Baelor to lead House Velaryon after him. But Baelor says no, because she's not a Velaryon connected to the sea. She's a Targaryen dragon rider, daughter of Daemon, granddaughter of Rhaenys. She says she's blood and fire, and she'll die in fire. But besides, Baela is betrothed to marry Jace, to become the Queen of Westeros after Rhaenyra. That's her destiny. So, who will be Corlys's heir? One possibility is his bastard son, Alan. Alfred Broom has been a pain in the ass for Rhaenyra, so Rhaenyra sends Alfred Broom to go to Harrenhal and talk to Daemon. Rhaenyra is worried that Daemon might turn against her. They haven't talked since that big argument in episode 2. So will Rhaenyra and Daemon repair their relationship? These two shots connect Daemon and Rhaenyra across the distance. Their relationship is in limbo, but they share fire and blood. Daemon might not listen to Sir Alfred Broom, but Alfred has been annoying for Rhaenyra, so at least this mission gets Alfred far away. Rhaenyra's son, Jace, is frustrated that Rhaenyra won't let him do anything. Jace is Rhaenyra's heir to the throne, and he wants to prove himself. So Jace says he'll go to Harrenhal and speak to Daemon. But Baela says Daemon won't listen to Jace, so instead Jace goes to the twins. The twins are ruled by House Frey, and they control an important bridge crossing the Trident River from the north down into the Riverlands. In Game of Thrones, Robb Stark makes an alliance with Lord Walder Frey so that Robb's army can cross the bridge. And now in Hot D, Lord Cragen Stark is sending an army south. So Jace wants the Freys to let the Northmen cross their bridge. Hopefully these Freys won't betray the Northmen, like Walder did at the Red Wedding. Hot D doesn't say who these Freys are, but in the books the Lord of the Twins is Forrest Frey, nicknamed Fool Frey, because he once asked to marry Rhaenyra, and she rejected him. The Lady of the Twins is Sabitha Frey, described as a sharp-tongued harridan who is fond of killing men and kissing women. But it's not clear if these Freys on Hot D are the same characters. The Freys agree to the alliance, but in return the Freys want Harrenhal, the biggest castle in Westeros. Harrenhal is also the place where Jace's father Harwin died. The current Lord of Harrenhal is Larys Strong, who supports the Greens, so the Freys assume that after Rhaenyra defeats the Greens, Rhaenyra will choose a new family to rule Harrenhal. So Jace agrees, and the Freys pledge their support for Rhaenyra. The Freys have one of the biggest armies in the Riverlands, alongside the Blackwoods and the Brackens, so Jace wins a powerful ally, like when he allied with the North and the Vale. Jace is a very successful diplomat, unlike his stepdad Daemon. In the book, it's also Jace's idea to make Corlys the Hand of the Queen, and it's Jace who sends Joffrey, Aegon, and Viserys away to safety. So in the book, Jace is even more of a leader, while Rhaenyra has less of a role. Rhaenyra wants a role model of how to be a successful female ruler, so she reads about Queen Visenya, a wife of King Aegon the Conqueror. Visenya was a warrior who used the sword Darksister, now wielded by Daemon, and she rode the dragon Vhagar before Laena and Aemond did. And Visenya was a powerful queen. She sometimes sat the throne and ruled in King Aegon's absence. So Rhaenyra could learn from Visenya. But Jace says that he hopes Rhaenyra doesn't imitate Visenya, because Visenya did kill a lot of people to put her evil son, Maegor the Cruel, on the throne. And Visenya might have also murdered her nephew King Aenys and resurrected Maegor with necromancy. It's a whole thing. In this world, there aren't many socially acceptable models of how to be a powerful woman. Rhaenyra says she's proud of Jace for allying with the Freys, but she is also angry at Jace for going to the twins without her permission. Raising teenagers is hard. But Jace suggests a plan to win the war. He says that they should find riders for the unclaimed dragons on Dragonstone. Vermithor and Silverwing were once the dragons of King Jaehaerys and Queen Alysanne, and Vermithor and Silverwing could be big enough to kill Vhagar. There's also Laenor's dragon Seasmoke, and the wild dragons, Grey Ghost, Sheepstealer, and the Cannibal. They just need to find people who can ride these dragons. It's believed that only Targaryens with the magic dragon blood can ride dragons. But the Targaryens probably have some relatives who intermarried with the Targaryens in the past. Like, the Baratheons are rumoured to have Targaryen blood through their founder, Orys Baratheon. In the books, the Velaryons have intermarried with the Targaryens several times. And we've also met Ulf, who claims to be a bastard son of Baelon Targaryen. There could be lots of people who have Targaryen blood who might be able to claim Rhaenyra's dragons. And Jace hints that you might not even need Targaryen blood at all to ride a dragon. Maybe that's just Valyrian propaganda and anyone could ride a dragon. So if Rhaenyra can find riders for her unclaimed dragons, they'd be unstoppable. She could kill Vhagar and win the war. But claiming a dragon is dangerous. Apparently Rhaena tried to claim a dragon and she was nearly killed. We also heard that Meleys rejected Daemon and only accepted Rhaenys. So who will the dragons choose as their riders? And it is dangerous to let non-Targaryens have dragons. Part of the reason why Targaryens practice incest, marrying their siblings, is to prevent other families from getting dragons. They want the powerful dragon blood to stay in the Targaryen family, or else other families could use dragons against them. It was dangerous enough letting the Velaryons have dragons. Do they really want Mallisters or Freys flying around on dragons? Rhaenyra says it's a mad thought, but they've got to try something, or else they will lose and die. So Rhaenyra rolls the dice. Some people like duck, and some people like goose. Some people like Alt-Shift-X, and some people like Alt-Swift-X. Alt-Swift-X and Glidus are making weekly, hours-long videos about each episode of Hot D Season 2. They've also covered Season 1 and made a 22-hour-long video about Jon Snow. That is 61 hours of exclusive dragon talk, and you can watch them now at nebula.tv/Alt-Swift-X. They're also available as audio on podcast apps using the Nebula RSS feed. Nebula is an independent video site owned by creators, where we can make ambitious projects without worrying about demonetization or the algorithm. Nebula has exclusive originals from creators like Isaac Arthur, Lindsay Ellis, Tale Foundry, and Abigail Thorne, who is in House of the Dragon Season 2, playing Triarchy Admiral Shirako Lohar. So to support Alt-Shift-X and Alt-Swift-X and Glidus and Triarchy Admiral Shirako Lohar, sign up to Nebula at nebula.tv/Alt-Shift-X, or /Alt-Swift-X if you prefer Goose. Using the links, you can get an annual plan for just $30. It's a great way to support Alt-Shift-X. Thanks. Remember to like and subscribe, and thanks to the patrons, including Patrick de Alessandro, CT100, Leanie Luna, Ben, Cole Anderson, and King Kirby the New God. Cheers.